Dr. George Yikos returns next as he sounds the alarm on how the spike protein has been shown in autopsy studies to penetrate small vessels throughout the body. He then explains why considering the natural degeneration of our bodies plays a major role in knowing how to treat diseases and post-vaccine injuries. He also shares insight into the healing protocols he's using to treat both COVID and COVID vaccine-related damage. Dr. Sangeeta Patti follows next as she goes into detail about the key areas you need to focus on to achieve healing, boost your immune system, and restore your DNA. She also outlines the 6 parameters that, when met, lead to the repairing of vessels and vital organs and optimal health and healing. Then Dr. Krishna Donapathy shares insight into the important role that eating clean, organic food plays in overall health and healing. He then also breaks down the essential nutrients that most of us are probably not getting enough of, but really need for overcoming and healing from diseases.
When you're looking at these autopsy studies, it seems that the spike is able to penetrate small vessels everywhere. So whether that's going to be in the brain or in your second brain, the gut, or if it's going to be an organ like your spleen or your heart, it's starting at the vascular level. And when you're seeding something that has the ability to induce inflammation all over the lining of your blood vessels, your body's trying to attack that. They're trying to nullify the problem. They're behaving the way they should, but they're behaving the way they should against something that's not going away. So when you're receiving a vaccination or a COVID jab, and you're constantly making your body produce something that's initiating an inflammatory response like that, you're going to affect the function of that organ, whether it's the large intestine, small intestine, heart, spleen, liver, brain. It's not, that part's not complicated. Fixing that is complicated. It's all microvascular clotting, and the mitochondria being overwhelmed in their ability to try to reduce that inflammation that's caused that organ dysfunction, and lack of the ability to support that mitochondrial function. What I'm referring to again is, I made a reference earlier about how your body does not stay the same forever. And as we're getting older, you get immunosenescence, even your immunity starts to wane. You get a waning hormone production, whether that's sex hormone production, thyroid hormone production, growth hormone production, a very important hormone, and understanding what's happening at the cellular level and how the cells are communicating with each other and what impact those hormones have really makes a big difference in being able to achieve optimal health well into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s. You can make a big impact on someone's health, understanding how the body behaves over time and what you could do to make it function optimally. So these are peptide signals that we're talking about at the cellular level. You can give combinations of amino acids, which when you put them together, they're called peptides. And peptides are what your body uses to communicate with distant organs. Your pituitary gland puts together peptides to create the hormone signaling that's needed. Being able to deal with insulin resistance and understanding how insulin resistance occurs and catching it as early as possible is one of the biggest ways we could probably save a lot of lives, getting people not to develop type 2 diabetes before we actually just diagnose them with the problem. And one of the biggest issues I've seen is we're constantly using a test that only looks back 3 months into someone's history to see what their sugar level is, when all you have to do is check a fasting insulin level, and you can know months to years before if somebody's on the path for developing type 2 diabetes, and hitting it early on where it's not going to cause long-term illness. So, this is not something that's part of the routine protocol in a conventional medicine practice. So understanding how cells behave, how they degrade over time, and what you could do to support them is what cellular medicine is all about. The only difference between a computer being hacked and being biohacked is that you're consciously trying to change a program that's faulty inside your body so that you're functioning normally again. So a biohack could be somebody is vitamin D deficient, and vitamin D is extremely important. It's a hormone that's derived from cholesterol. It also has antimicrobial properties. It also is very important for your calcium homeostasis and your bone growth. But most importantly, it's used every time your DNA is being transcribed to produce a necessary protein in your body. Vitamin D has to be present for that to occur. So very easy to biohack people who are having problems long term. If their vitamin D levels are low, you can biohack them to start functioning more optimally. So that's a minor example. There are people that have long haul symptoms where they have mental fog, problems with clarity in their thinking. They just don't feel themselves, whether it was after a COVID infection or after a COVID jab, and methylene blue seems to do some really wonderful things in this regard. Now, these are all off-label uses, but they work. And if you understand where they work, in the case of methylene blue at the level of the electron transport chain, you can understand why it's making a big difference when people are using these things. For the longest time, cardiologists have always recommended aerobic exercise. And I've come to the opinion over the last few years it's actually probably not the right recommendation. And again, looking back at the cellular perspective, when people are pushing themselves really hard in a running program, you're actually going to start creating some cortisol issues. You're constantly training yourself in the fight or flight mode. And there's probably a lot more benefit in trying to maintain muscle mass. So a weight training routine, not necessarily heavy, it could be light weights, frequent reps, and building skeletal muscle is a way to make a big impact on your insulin, on your growth hormone secretion. So maintaining muscle mass probably has a lot more power in achieving optimal health than actual running. So a little bit of aerobics is fine, but I focus more on telling people about trying to maintain their muscle mass. A really big problem as people are getting older is sarcopenia, and it does lead to health problems when you don't have this metabolically active tissue in large amounts on your skeleton. And really, motivation, I think, is a very tough question. People get motivated for different reasons. So one could be for health reasons. Other people just need music to be motivated. But the thing to understand when it comes to exercise is when you exercise, you miss it when you don't. And it's a matter of breaking that vicious cycle of just, I would rather sit and eat rather than exercise and then snack afterward. And also when it comes to exercise, I think a very big key is most people are going to notice a tremendous benefit to any exercise routine if you do it on a fasting schedule. So if you're somebody that's intermittently fasting, you're going to see much bigger results in your exercise routine if you exercise before you break your fast. And that's something I do recommend to people on top of the weight training routine that I'm usually discussing with them. Genetics will be the hard drive on your computer. Epigenetics is writing a software program to change how that hardware is operating. So let's see if we can follow that through a little bit more. If you have a genetic predilection to develop dementia as time goes on, it's very clear there are certain steps you can do from a dietary and exercise perspective to significantly reduce that risk. So we have people that have a gene called ApoE4 that's expressing itself, and that population has a much higher risk for developing things like dementia. And lifestyle changes, focusing more on a Mediterranean type of eating style, exercising on a regular basis, can make a big impact in reducing the likelihood that that patient's going to develop dementia. There are people who have a very difficult time methylating, and methylation is a very important aspect to optimal health. So you'll find people that have certain genotypes where they don't methylate appropriately, and you can help them by not just telling them to take a supplement, but telling them to take methylated forms of the supplement so you can overcome that genetic code. And so what you're practicing there are epigenetics. You're changing the software programs so that this way you're taking advantage of the deficiencies in your genetic code. So epigenetics probably play a much bigger role in people's health than we give credit to. And it's not very often that you'll hear people undergoing genetic testing to find out what it is that they should be doing differently in order to achieve optimal health. And you're not going to find that in the conventional realm most of the time. Well, if we're going to try to go naturally without supplements, I mean, the big drawback being is how many calories of food could you possibly have to get the 90 essential minerals and vitamins that you need on a daily basis in your body. And that's where supplements become important. But if we're going to be talking about what you could do from a natural perspective to make an impact on your health, it's eating organic, and as long as you can assure yourself that what you're eating is organic. But those pesticides, those herbicides that are being sprayed on our food are probably making a big impact, even to the gluten-sensitive population. It's crazy how often I hear that people who are gluten-sensitive can eat wheat products that come out of Italy, but cannot even touch a wheat product here in the United States. And one of the biggest horrifying things I found out recently is that the way to get wheat to market faster is to make it dry fast. So how do you make wheat dry fast? Well, the trick here is to spray Roundup on it, and it will dry a lot faster, and it will get to the market faster. Whereas that does not get done in places, especially in certain places of Italy, where they really believe in organic farming. So it's not just gluten that's an issue. It could be the way the gluten's being harvested that's the problem. But gluten in and of itself is probably something that if you can minimize, you're going to make a lot of headway into your health. Sugar, the food pyramid of the 1970s, where it focused primarily on wheats, grains, breads. So it wasn't just the fact that herbicides, pesticides, and these things were contaminating our food, but anything that's stimulating insulin production is probably something you want to minimize over time. So bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, that shouldn't be your staple. That should be a very small portion of your plate, and you should probably make some smart choices where you're picking non-gluten variety carbs to eat. So I think that's a pretty simple measure, along with good hydration, and eating very colorful foods is very, very important. I mean, that's probably one way where you're going to get a lot of wonderful anti-cancer agents and anti-inflammatory agents into your system. The more colorful it is, usually the better it is for you.